Alright, hello AP Worlders. We're here with part 2 of the new networks of trade in the early modern era. Alright, last time we looked at Europe building in the Americas and Russia. This time we're going to look at Europe coming into the IOB. And we're also going to look at China, who's going to push into Central Eurasia. We're going to next look at the Turk-Mongol and Mughal invaders who from Central Asia are going to create the Mughal Empire, which is going to take over Hindu South Asia. And then we're going to also look at the Ottoman Empire, which is going to bring Islam rule to the Christian population in this former Byzantine area. All right, we'll spend a little bit of time looking at the Islamic state of the Safavid that was here. All right, now none of these three places had the global reach or worldwide impact that Europe did. Nor did they have the same devastating and transforming impact on their conquered people. For those people already had immunity to their diseases. And nor did these empires transform the homelands as much as the Americas transformed Europe. So the homelands of these areas didn't transform as much as Europe did from their expansions. First group we're going to look at here is China. In China, they're going to decline during this era to construct a maritime empire. All right, remember Zheng He from the last unit, his travels were ended from that Ming dynasty, and all the records were destroyed. This decision is going to be a major turning point in world history, because it's going to allow for the Europeans to come into this IOB trade. But China did expand to the north, up here, and to its west. The Qing dynasty, spelled Qing, they're going to head this effort. The Qing dynasty were foreign to China. They actually lived north up here above the Great Wall in what is today Manchuria. And they would come down and conquer China. And similar to the Mongols, when they conquered, they forbid intermarriage. Their ruling elites did master the Chinese language and Confucian teaching, and they used Chinese-style government. The Qing set out on an 80-year military effort to expand their motivation. Their motivation was security concerns and not economic. So they didn't have economic; it was more security. All right, they wanted security from the pastoral nomads and also from Russia expanding out here. The new land was ruled separately from the rest of China through a new office, the Court of Colonial Affairs, and they would keep local leaders in power. They did not try to assimilate the local people, nor did they migrate there in large numbers. This did still have long-term significance moving on here and up here. First, it expanded their land. It expanded the people in China's empire. And similar to Russia, its expansion settled the lands of Central Asia, ending the pastoral nomads from this region. But it also led to an impoverished area here today in Central Asia. Next, we'll look at the Mughal dynasty, which was here in South Asia. All right, these three, Mughal, Safavid, and Ottoman Empire, are known as the Gunpowder empires. All right, but the Mughal Empire, they were Turk Muslim warriors who are going to invade India and rule for almost 200 years. The ruling dynasty was about 20% of the population were Muslim. All right, most of the rest were Hindu. But the most famous ruler was Akbar, Akbar, and he helped to incorporate the Hindu people into the Mughal dynasty. He hired them into government and military jobs, and he also built Hindu temples. He even softened the harsh Hindu treatment of women, such as sati, when they threw themselves into the fire after their husband died, and child marriage. He also imposed a policy of tolerance and removed the tax on Hindu people. But many Muslims there disagreed with them, and after Akbar died, a new leader, Aurangzeb, reversed almost all the gains that Akbar had made. He treated the Hindus unfairly, and this is going to lead to the weakening of the Mughal Empire. And that weakening is what eventually is going to enable Britain to take over and rule India. Next group we'll look at here is the Ottoman Empire, the group in green. And like the Mughal states, they were also created by a Turkish warrior group. Because the Ottoman Empire is going to become the world's most significant Islamic empire of the time. And the empire is going to grow over much of the Middle East, North Africa, and southeastern Europe. These Turks are going to adopt Islam in a settled way of life, which is going to end the pastoral rights that women once had that were a part of this Turkish group. Now, the elite women were secluded and veiled. However, women kept their influence in government in the Ottoman Empire, and they were able to have property rights, marriage, and divorce rights, and inheritance rights. Their neighbors to the east in Persia, right, old Persia area, is going to be the Safavid. And they are also going to be a Muslim dynasty, but these two aren't going to work together because they're going to follow Shia form of the faith, where the Ottomans are going to be Sunni. And this is what's going to cause conflict between the two. But the Safavid, they had a strong Persian culture in their poetry, painting, and traditions. And the Ottomans would borrow from some of their culture. Like the Mughal dynasty, the Ottoman dynasty was going to be a site of a highly cross-cultural encounter between two religions. In the Mughal, it was a counter or a clash between Islam and Hinduism. In the Ottomans, it's going to be a crash between Islam and Christianity, because they're ruling over former land that was the Byzantine. Many of the people converted to Islam. Constantinople fell and was renamed into Istanbul, which is right here. And that became the capital for the Ottomans. However, in the Balkan states, which is this area, which is current day, like Greece, which is here, there was very few people that converted to Islam. Most remained Christian. But many of them welcomed the new Ottoman rule because their taxes were less than the Byzantine, and oppression was less than the Byzantine. But Turkish rule did affect the Christians through a process of devshirme, spelled Devshirme. And that's where they would take thousands of Christian boys and make them perform a service for the state. All right, and last we're going to look at Europe's involvement in the trade in the Indian Ocean. All right, Europe going to the Americas was an accident. Europe coming to Asia was on purpose. All right, Vasco da Gama, right, da Gama here, 1497. You can see he's going to be the first. He's from Portugal. He's going to start it. He's going to be the first to make the trip around Africa. He was trying to find a sea route to get out here to these trade goods. All right, but once he got to the Indian Ocean basin trade, he encountered an ancient and rich network of trade. They had a lot of motivation, the Europeans, to try to find this way to get around here. First, they wanted to get access to the spices that were out here, all right, especially the spices from the East Indies for their foods and things. Also, they had a recovery from the Black Death, so they were willing to explore. They wanted to stop relying on getting the goods from here from the Muslims, all right, for those goods. And Europe had problems paying for the goods, all right. They had nothing of value, so they had to pay in gold or silver in order to get these goods. And this was causing a trade deficit. So they looked for the gold here in Africa. All right, so you might remember they learned that there was so much gold here in Africa from Mansa Musa, right? So the Portuguese were the first to start. And like I said, Europe learned early their goods were not wanted. But they also learned most ships in the Indian Ocean were not heavily armed. And China was no longer involved. So Portugal saw an opening with their military technology. Portugal would force their way into the trade and create fortified posts along the Indian Ocean basin. These trading post empires, or they would be called a trading post empire, and they were an attempt to control trade, not territory. Portugal, even with its military force, failed to dominate the trade, and they would gradually back off from being forceful for the trade, and what they started to do was transport the goods instead. They were selling their services, so they would transport the goods from the different areas and kind of charge them for transporting them, kind of like a UPS. Other European countries gradually replaced Portugal because Portugal was too small to maintain it. And the first country to replace Portugal is going to be Spain. And they're going to set up in the Philippine Islands, which are here. You see their closeness to China. All right, and these Philippine Islands are going to be named after King Philip II, who was the king of Spain during the time. And their proximity to China and Japan and the Spice Islands was perfect for Spain. Spain would keep control of them until the U.S. Would gain control of the Philippines after the Spanish-American War. But they became the only Christian major outpost in Asia, and they're going to set up a large landed estates there in the Philippines. The next group to come are going to come from the East India Company, all right, and that is going to be 2 East Indian companies, and there's going to be one from the Dutch and one from the English, and they're going to quickly replace the Portuguese, often by force, and they competed also amongst themselves. They both were economically and militarily superior to the Portuguese, and they both created private trading companies who raised money amongst investors, and the government gave them charters granting them trade monopolies and power to govern in war the conquered people. So these East Indian companies, first the Dutch East Indian Company and the British East Indian Company, they were private companies, but the government gave them charters to do this trade, right? And the government would profit from it. So first we'd look at the Dutch. They focused on Indonesia. And what they did in Indonesia, they came in forcefully with much bloodshed. The Dutch took control, and then they were going to control the spice trade. All right, so they're going to control the spice trade down here in Indonesia. And they destroyed the local economy because they had control of it. The British East Indian Company, they're going to focus on India, which is here. And they operated differently. All right, the Mughal dynasty was powerful at the time, so they couldn't come in with force. So the British, to be able to participate in the trade, they got permission, and they created bases for trade in the Mughal dynasty. And they focused on cotton textiles. All right, but then after the weakening of the Mughals, that's when Britain's going to then take over and rule India. So they focused on cotton textiles, as I said. The profits European trade or made in this trade enabled them to purchase these Asian goods, saving that gold and silver. And so it changed the balance of power. It changed the balance of trade. Now the Europeans, after they ruled these places, could get these goods without having to give up their gold and silver. So now they were in the power seat. Another spot that came a conflict is going to be down here in South Africa. I didn't put this on your sheets, but make sure you guys add this and know this in your notes. All right. In South Africa, we're going to get the Dutch and the British are going to both try to claim forts here. All right. The Dutch are going to be known as the Boers. And eventually we're going to get into the Boer Wars, which is going to be a war between the French, or the Dutch, and the British for control down here in South Africa. All right, so make sure you guys write that down about the Boer Wars. All right, so that's everything for today. See you in class.